Welcome back! My name is Ballerscuba. This is Video Games Over Time! We are still in 1986. Today, we're going to talk about basketball. Much like the other sports we have talked about, basketball is a topic that some video game fans avoid. However, the history of video games and the history of sports are often linked. In order to fully understand the history of video games, it is important to have at least a basic understanding of the history and rules of basketball. We will start with history. Unlike other sports we have mentioned, basketball has a fairly clear creation story. Basketball, at least what would become the sport we know today, was created in December 1891 in Springfield, Massachusetts by Dr. James Naismith. Naismith was a physical education instructor at the time at the YMCA International Training School. The school instructed Naismith to create a game to keep athletes in shape during the cold weather months. Naismith returned with a publication of 5 basic ideas and 13 rules for the new game, which the students would call basketball. Basketball originally was played with a soccer-style ball and 2 peach baskets. The overall object of the game was to throw the ball into the peach basket, which was nailed to the gym's balcony, to score points. A janitor would then climb a ladder and retrieve the ball. It was not long before the bottoms of the baskets were removed to speed up the game. The game became popular quickly, with amateur games being played in both North America and Canada, primarily due to the influence of the YMCA. The game's rules and equipment would change quickly as the game developed and became more popular. The first professional basketball league was founded in 1898, the National Basketball League. However, this failed and was abandoned by 1904. It would take several decades before a professional basketball league would form that would stand the test of time. However, at the collegiate level, basketball would be formalized much earlier. The first intercollegiate game was played in 1895 between male students at Hamline University and Minnesota A&M. Women's basketball was not far behind, with their first game being played between Stanford and California in 1896. By 1905, 15 colleges took control of the college game, creating the Basketball Rule Committee. This committee was absorbed into what would become the National Collegiate Athletic Association, or NCAA, in 1909. The NCAA men's basketball tournament would start being played in 1939. Internationally, basketball would be formalized under the International Basketball Federation in Geneva in 1932. The International Basketball Federation, or Fédération Internationale de Basketball Amateur, or FIBA, would coordinate tournaments and teams across nations to play basketball at the international level. FIBA was effective quickly, getting basketball included in the Olympics by 1936, a tournament won by the United States national team. They would start holding a men's world championship in 1950 and a women's world championship in 1953. It was around this time that basketball would get its lasting professional league in the United States. In 1935, the Midwest Basketball Conference was founded, created by 3 corporations in the Great Lakes area: General Electric, Firestone, and Goodyear. In 1937, the league changed its name to the National Basketball League, or NBL, to appeal to a larger audience. The NBL was largely informal, with scheduling done by the teams themselves. The only real rules for scheduling was that the team needed to play at least 10 games, with at least 4 of them on the road. Even the length of games was not standard, and was up to the home team's discretion between 2 different choices. In 1946, the much more formal Basketball Association of America, or BAA, was founded in New York by sports promoters from major arenas around the country. The league started with 11 teams in 2 divisions, the Eastern and Western divisions, who would play a season of 60 or 61 games. The top 3 teams from each division would then play in the playoffs and a final series to determine the winner of the league. The BAA was the first league to play at large arenas, such as New York City's Madison Square Garden and Boston's Boston Garden. The league did encounter problems early, though. The league did not have better play than other smaller basketball leagues and also had a color barrier, only allowing white players on the teams. Some of the arenas also doubled as hockey arenas, and some owners would simply put a wooden floor over the ice, leading to games getting canceled due to puddles on the floor. Owners would also often not heat their buildings, leading some fans to bring blankets to the games and some players needing to wear gloves when playing. Attendance was low, averaging around 3,000 fans per game, and the league struggled financially. Several teams folded before the second season of the BAA. But things would turn around for the BAA. Wataru Misaka, a Japanese American, broke the BAA's color barrier during the second season. By the third season of the league, the BAA began absorbing teams from the NBL, including the NBL's reigning champions. In 1949, after 3 years of competing for players, teams, and fans, the BAA and the NBL merged, creating the National Basketball Association, or NBA. The NBA would go on to claim the BAA's history, denying the NBL's history, and would consider the 1949 deal as an expansion, not a merger. The NBA would also fully break the color barrier in 1950 when Harold Hunter, the league's first African-American player, joined the league. The NBA would also get their first national television contract in 1953. Starting with 17 teams, the NBA would consolidate the teams over the next few years, reaching its smallest size of just 8 franchises throughout the second half of the 1950s. As a result, the level of play would rise dramatically during the latter half of the 1950s and first half of the 1960s. Bill Russell would join the Boston Celtics, an already good team with star player Bob Cousy and coach Red Auerbach, in 1957. Led by Russell, the Celtics would win 11 NBA titles in 13 seasons, including 8 in a row from 1959 through 1966. Wilt Chamberlain joined the Philadelphia Warriors in 1959. Chamberlain would dominate the league on an individual level, setting 72 total records, 68 of them individually. The rivalry between Wilt Chamberlain and Bill Russell, who often played directly against each other, would come to dominate much of the history of the NBA during the 1960s, helping to increase the league's popularity. During the 1960s, several teams would join the NBA and several teams would move to new cities, spreading the NBA across the nation. By the end of the 1960s, the NBA would have 14 teams. The NBA was the dominant basketball league, but there were others. The largest competitor to the NBA was the American Basketball Association, or ABA. The ABA was founded in 1967. It has been said that the ultimate goal of the ABA was not to take over the NBA, but to force a merger with the NBA, earning money for investors and owners of the teams involved. Regardless of the reason for the league, the ABA started competing with the NBA quickly. The ABA was able to hire 4 of the best referees in the NBA and the NBA's leading scorer, Rick Barry. The ABA played a looser, flashier style of basketball. It used a colorful red, white, and blue basketball as opposed to the NBA's orange basketball. The ABA started with 11 teams, including regional teams that would play home games in several different cities. The ABA and NBA would compete for players, with several star players signing for the ABA. Despite the league's promise, the ABA struggled. The lack of a national television contract would be difficult for the league's teams, and several teams folded. Due to the saturation of the game, including 4 more teams, the NBA would also struggle in the 1970s. The two leagues would reach a settlement in 1976, officially merging the two leagues into the NBA. As a result of the merger, 4 ABA teams would join the NBA, with 2 ABA teams being disbanded. The NBA would then have 22 teams in the league and all the star players. While the ABA would ultimately not take over the NBA, the ABA's style of play would have an influence on the NBA, with the NBA adopting several of the rules and some of the events the ABA pioneered. Despite the consolidation of the leagues, though, the NBA would struggle in the second half of the 1970s. The TV ratings declined, attendance was low, and several players were caught with substance abuse issues. It has been said that the league was nearing the brink of collapse. Things began to turn around for the NBA in the 1979 season. That year, Larry Bird would join the Boston Celtics, and Earvin "Magic" Johnson would join the Los Angeles Lakers. The two players had played each other in the 1979 NCAA basketball championship game and already had a rivalry between them. The rivalry between Magic and Bird would come to dominate the story of basketball and would popularize the league. For women's basketball, progress was slow. Despite starting around the same time as men's basketball at the collegiate level, it would take decades for this to be formalized. It took until 1976 for the first women's basketball competition at the Olympics. It took until 1982 for the NCAA to hold the first women's basketball tournament, establishing for the first time a national champion in women's collegiate basketball. At a professional level, it took until 1978 for the first women's basketball league to form, the Women's Professional Basketball League, but that only lasted until 1981. Internationally, basketball continued to gain popularity. Leagues would form around the world, with teams in Latin America, Europe, and parts of Asia having success playing the game in their respective countries. Each of these leagues have their own histories which are worthy of further study, but those fall outside our needs today. Despite those leagues' successes, the NBA is still considered the world's premier basketball league. That is a history of professional basketball through 1986. With that said, it would be remiss to not mention the Harlem Globetrotters. The Harlem Globetrotters were founded in 1926 originally as the Chicago Globetrotters. They began as an exhibition team showcasing the skill of black basketball players. They would regularly participate in basketball tournaments and would even defeat the Minneapolis Lakers in 1948, one of the best white basketball teams in the country at the time. However, with the rise of the NBA, particularly due to the NBA starting to recruit black players in the 1950s, including several members of the Harlem Globetrotters, the Globetrotters began changing their style. The Globetrotters started incorporating comedy into their exhibitions. Over time, the Globetrotters would start becoming known for their entertainment rather than their competitive play. While still possessing impressive basketball skills, the Globetrotters stopped being competitive and became a staged show, built around entertaining the crowd under the premise of a basketball game. While it is said that the game itself, always against the Washington Generals, is not staged, the Harlem Globetrotters have only lost one game since 1952, and the Generals will always allow the comedic antics and showcases of the skills of the Globetrotters to happen without interference. The Globetrotters would travel the world with their show, acting as ambassadors, not only for the game of basketball and America as a whole, but specifically for black people in America. That is more or less the state of basketball in 1986. With that explored, it's time to look at the rules of the game. We will focus on the rules of the NBA as they were in 1986. Basketball is played on a court, typically with hardwood floors that measure 94 feet by 50 feet. At the end of the court, there is a round metal hoop placed 10 feet above the floor, known as the rim or basket. The rim has a diameter of 18 inches and will have a white net hanging underneath. Behind the basket will be the backboard, a glass backstop that measures 42 inches high and 72 inches wide. The backboard will have a rectangle drawn on it, but this is designed to be useful to the players and has no relevance to the rules. In front of the basket will be a painted area known as the key. The key is 16 feet wide and extends from the boundary line to 15 feet from the point of the floor directly below the backboard. Around the basket there is a line known as the 3-point line that stretches between 22 feet from the basket in the corners and 23 feet 9 inches from the basket in an arc towards the center of the court. There is also a line at the halfway point of the floor, known as half court, and circles around the center of the court and the ends of the keys. The basketball itself has an inflatable rubber bladder in the center, which is wrapped in layers of fiber and covered typically in a synthetic composite resembling rubber or leather. It will typically have a circumference between 29.5 to 30.3 inches with a weight between 20 and 22 ounces. The measurements need to be fairly precise to make sure the ball has the right amount of bounce to it and has a size with the correct proportion to the rim, which is a little less than twice the diameter of the ball. The overall object of the game is to put the basketball over the top, then through the rim on the other side of the court. This will earn the team points. A ball that goes up through the rim will not earn the teams any points. The team with the most points at the end of time will win the game. Basketball is played in 4 12-minute quarters. Time will stop when a violation or foul is committed, and when one team scores, the other team will be given possession of the ball. Because stopping the clock is common, these 48-minute games will often take around 2 hours to play. The game starts with what is known as a jump ball. One player from each team, typically the tallest players, will gather in the middle of the floor with the rest of the players outside the middle circle. An official, known as a referee, will toss the ball in the air. The players in the circle will attempt to jump and tip the ball to their teammates to gain possession of the ball. This is also known as an opening tip or tip-off. Basketball is a team sport, played with 5 players on each team playing at a time. The team with possession of the ball is known as the offensive team, and the team without possession of the ball is known as the defensive team. When a player has possession of the ball, they can only move while dribbling the ball. Dribbling is when the ball is bounced with only one hand per bounce. Moving more than 2 steps without dribbling is a violation known as traveling, or running with the ball. If a player is called for traveling, their team will lose possession of the ball and the other team will be given the ball. Should the player touch the ball with both hands, they cannot dribble any further and must stop moving. Attempting to dribble again will result in a violation known as a double dribble, which will lose possession of the ball for their team. When a player has possession of the ball, they can dribble the ball, pass the ball to a teammate, or shoot the ball at any time. Shooting the ball is attempting to put the basketball through the basket. Where the player is standing when they begin to shoot the ball will determine how many points the shot is worth. If the player is standing on or within the 3-point line, then that shot will be worth 2 points. If the player is standing beyond the 3-point line, then that shot will be worth 3 points. Occasionally, players from both teams will both have possession of the ball at the same time. If the referee judges that the ball is in possession by both teams, the referee will call for a jump ball between the 2 players with possession. This will either happen in the center of the court or in the circles at the top of the key, depending on where the ball is when play is stopped. Although players are allowed to make contact with other players in basketball, any attempt to unfairly disadvantage an opponent through that contact is illegal and will result in a personal foul. Because the definition of a foul is vague and typically up to the interpretation of the referees, decisions on fouls are sometimes controversial. If a personal foul is committed on a player while that player is not in possession of the ball, is dribbling the ball, or is passing the ball, then the fouled player's team will gain possession of the ball by taking the ball outside the court and passing the ball back onto the court, known as a throw-in. When throwing the ball in, the player has only 5 seconds to make a pass. Otherwise, the player will receive a 5-second violation and the other team will get a throw-in. If a personal foul is committed on a player while that player is shooting the ball and the ball does not go through the basket, then that player will earn 2 free throws, each worth 1 point, regardless of how many points the shot was worth. If the ball does go in the basket, then that player will earn 1 free throw. This is referred to as and 1. During a free throw, the player that was fouled will get to shoot the ball from the other end of the key from the basket without any interference. If the free throw is the last free throw the player gets, a missed shot will be live and the ball will be in play once it hits the rim. During a free throw, the other players will stand just outside the key in alternating assigned slots. The defensive team will get both positions closest to the basket. During play, the players can only spend 3 seconds inside the key, also known as the paint or the lane. Staying inside the key for more than 3 seconds without actively guarding an opponent will result in a 3-second violation, also known as 3 in the key or a lane violation. If the offensive team commits a 3-second violation, the defensive team will be awarded the ball for a throw-in. If a defensive team commits a 3-second violation, they will be given a technical foul. A technical foul, also known as a tech or T, is an infraction of the rules that does not involve physical contact during the course of play or is committed by a non-player, such as a coach. These can be called for a variety of reasons, but perhaps the most common is due to foul language from either the players or coaches. With a technical foul, the opposing team is given a single free throw with no players outside the key, and then the team is given possession of the ball. Technical fouls are considered more serious than personal fouls. Should a player receive 6 personal fouls or 2 technical fouls, they will be ejected from the game. The team will be able to substitute another player in, but the player will often be banned from courtside. The ball and any players touching the ball must remain inside the lines on the court at all times. If the ball or players with the ball touch the line or go over the line, the ball will be given to the team who did not touch the ball last for a throw-in. Offensive teams are also limited by how long they can have possession of the ball. There is a 24-second shot clock. When a team gains possession of the ball, they have 24 seconds to shoot the ball. This shot must be out of the player's hands before the timer expires, then must hit the rim in order to prevent a violation. If the team fails to do this, they will incur a 24-second violation and the opposing team will be given possession. When the ball does hit the rim, the clock is reset back to 24 seconds. The 24 seconds will also be reset if an offensive player is fouled on the offense's side of the court. Offensive teams also only have 10 seconds to bring the ball over the half-court line. Otherwise, they will commit a 10-second violation and the opposing team will be given possession. Once the ball does cross the half-court line, it must stay there while the offense has possession. Going back over the half-court line will result in a backcourt violation and the opposing team will be given possession. As we mentioned, basketball is played with 5 players on a team. These players are often given one of 5 positions to play, though these positions are unofficial and are not listed in the rules for the game. The first position, or 1, is the point guard. This is typically the fastest player on the team, usually is the best ball handler, and will often be the player to organize the team's offense. This player will often play near the center of the court when on offense, typically at the center of the 3-point line. The second position, or 2, is the shooting guard. This player is typically the best shooter on the team, especially the more long-ranged shots. The third position, or 3, is the small forward. This player often will be the player to dribble through the defense, known as penetrating or driving. The shooting guard and the small forward are sometimes known as the wings, since they will play a distance away from the basket on either side of the point guard. The fourth position, or 4, is the power forward. This player will often play on offense close to the basket, but face out to receive passes from their teammates. The fifth position, or 5, is the center. This is often the tallest player on the team. Like the power forward, a center on offense will often play close to the basket, but face out to receive passes from their teammates. The power forward and center are sometimes called post players or the post positions. This refers to their position near the basket facing out, which is known as the post. If the players are given these positions, they are sometimes given these positions based on size alone, with the tallest and biggest players being the centers and power forwards, and the smallest players being the point guards and shooting guards. While on defense, a player must be guarding an offensive player directly. Guarding an area instead of a player, known as zone defense, is considered illegal and results in a technical foul. Teams will typically want to position their taller players closest to the basket. This not only allows the tall players to be close to the basket for scoring purposes, it also allows the tall players to be in a good position to grab shots that do not go in. Grabbing the missed shots is known as a rebound. Taller players are also known for hitting the ball while it is being shot or is in the air while on defense. This is known as a block. Blocks are only allowed when the ball is still in the offensive player's hand, although the hand itself cannot be touched, or if the ball is still going up. Once the ball has started going down, blocking the ball is known as goaltending, which will award the opposing team the points for the shot as if it went in. The ball then cannot be touched again until the ball has either hit the backboard and is lower than the rim, or has hit the rim and is no longer directly above the rim. Smaller players will typically be better at handling and passing the balls. Should the player pass the ball to a teammate who is then able to score because of the pass, the first player will be awarded an assist. Smaller players will also often attempt to take the ball from their opponents directly, especially while the ball is being dribbled or being passed. If the players are able to get possession of the ball from their opponents, this is known as a steal. While on defense, the players will often guard the same position that they play on offense. So centers guard centers, point guards guard point guards, and so on. However, coaches will sometimes switch the defensive positions depending on the skill sets of the players involved. Over the years, players have developed several types of ways of shooting the ball, sometimes giving creative names to these shots. While we will not go over all these shots, there are a couple worth mentioning specifically. If the player is close enough to the basket that the player can hold the ball in their hand with their palm up and gently let go or toss the ball into the basket, this is known as a layup. These will often bounce on the backboard, known as banking, before going in. If the player has a more clear path to the rim and is tall enough, they may grab the ball with one or two hands over the rim, then force the ball downward through the basket. This is known as a slam dunk or dunk. As time has gone on, players have developed more and more elaborate ways to creatively dunk the ball. If a player gets a slam dunk, this is often seen as a form of domination over their opponents. Those are the rules of basketball and a general idea of how the game is played, at least in 1986. Keep in mind there is a lot of slang in basketball, a lot of strategies and moves that we did not cover, and the game has changed and will continue to change over time. With that talked about, let's talk about the NBA in particular. In the NBA in 1986, there are 23 teams. Those are split into two conferences, the Eastern and Western conferences. Each conference has 2 divisions. In the Eastern Conference, there is the Atlantic Division and the Central Division. In the Western Conference, there is the Midwest Division and the Pacific Division. Those 23 teams each play 82 games between October and April during the regular season. After the regular season, the top 8 teams from each conference will play in a playoff tournament. The first round of the playoffs is a best-of-5 series. All rounds after that are a best-of-7 series. Those subsequent rounds are known as the conference semifinals, the conference finals, and the NBA finals, respectively. Before the season started, there was a draft with a new format. Known as the draft lottery, the system put all non-playoff teams in envelopes in a hopper. Then the NBA commissioner, at this time David Stern, pulled an envelope out to determine the draft order. The system was devised to counter teams purposefully losing games in order to get a better draft pick, though it was met with controversy at the time when it was introduced in 1985. Once the order was determined, the teams then selected players from high school and college basketball teams from around the country to join their team. There is a game between the game's best players known as the NBA All-Star Game. This game happened during the season in February and would put the East's best players against the West's best players. Around the All-Star Game, there would be a slam dunk contest and a 3-point competition. Both of these events were pioneered in the ABA. Like many sports organizations, the NBA has been subject to several controversies. The NBA has been accused of racism, favoritism, and fixing their games. The players have been accused of, and found guilty of, substance crimes, violent crimes, and sexual crimes. It is always important to remember that the players do lead lives off the court, and those lives can be problematic. In the history of video games, basketball has played a background role since nearly the beginning of video games. Basketball video games have been present on the Magnavox Odyssey, the Magnavox Odyssey 2, the Atari 2600, the Intellivision, arcades, and American computers. While many of the games were popular, most games were fairly generic. The standout basketball game prior to 1986 was One-on-One Dr. J vs. Larry Bird. One-on-One Dr. J vs. Larry Bird was released in 1983 by Electronic Arts for American computers. Designed by Eric Hammond, the game was seen as the best basketball game available. Featuring Julius Erving, known as Dr. J, and Larry Bird, the game was a one-on-one basketball game. The game was deep, allowing for several different kinds of shots, fouls, a 24-second shot clock, and even the ability to shatter the backboard with a hard dunk. The game would be popular and would be reviewed well at the time. In 1986, though, basketball would see a video game that would become more influential and more popular than any basketball video game that came before it. But that will have to wait until our next video. That will do it for the story of basketball for now. My name is Ballerscuba. This has been Video Games Over Time. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in our next video when we try to make some posters.